The dragon's den pulsed with energy, a low hum of whispered deals and clinking glasses weaving through the dimly lit room. Clara's heart hammered as she balanced the tray in her hands, her legs moving almost of their own accord toward the table no one dared approach. Every step felt heavier, the air thick with expectation and danger. She had rehearsed her politest smile, her calmest voice, but nothing could have prepared her for the presence waiting in the shadows. Park Min-jae sat like a king surveying his kingdom, dark eyes scanning the room until they landed on her. The world seemed to shrink around him, all noise fading except for the quiet, impossible pull toward the woman who didn't belong here. Her green eyes met his, wide and wary, and a flicker of something unfamiliar, a curiosity, a spark, stirred within him. 15 years of command, 15 years of isolation, and in one glance, he felt the walls he had built around himself tremble. Clara drew in a breath, approaching the table with trembling hands. Her voice, barely above a whisper, faltered as she asked, "Sir, what would you like to drink?" Min-jae's gaze sharpened, then softened in a way that made her stomach twist. He leaned slightly forward, voice low but deliberate. "What's your name?" "Clara," she said, her voice trembling. "You don't belong here, Clara," he said, and it wasn't a warning. It was an observation, almost a confession. Every instinct screamed at her to step back, to retreat into safety. And yet, something in the way he looked at her, the intensity, the absence of judgment, the hint of loneliness, made her step closer instead. In that moment, the room, the danger, the secrets, everything faded. There was only this connection, raw and immediate, and the unsettling realization that her life had just changed forever. And just like that, two lives collided in a way that would change everything. A ruthless mafia boss who's never felt anything, and a woman running from a past she can't escape. Before we dive into their incredible journey, I have to know, do you believe in love at first sight? Or do you think instant attraction is just chemistry waiting to fade? Drop your answer in the comments. If you're already hooked by Clara and Min-jae's story, if you can already feel the tension and want to know what happens next, hit that like button right now. It lets me know you're invested. And here's the thing. This story is going to take you on an emotional roller coaster you won't forget. If you want to experience every twist, every moment of danger, and every heartbeat of their forbidden romance, you need to subscribe and turn on notifications. Trust me, you don't want to miss a single second of what's coming. Now, are you ready to see how a dangerous obsession becomes the kind of love that transforms everything? Perfect. Let's dive in, because Min-jae's obsession with Clara is about to begin, and it starts with a single question he can't stop asking himself. Who is she, and why can't I stop thinking about her? Clara moved through the streets of Seoul with practiced invisibility, a ghost in a city that never stopped moving. By day, she was a barista at a cramped coffee shop, smiling politely at customers while silently counting the minutes until her next shift. By night, she waited tables at a sleek downtown lounge, balancing trays of champagne and cocktails while keeping her head down. Somewhere in between, she cleaned offices and apartments, hustling to send money home to her sick mother in America. Every step, every borrowed uniform, every polite nod was a careful act of survival, a way to outrun the life she had left behind. Park Min-jae, on the other hand, lived a world in stark contrast. The youngest crime boss in Seoul's history, he ruled with an iron fist, his name whispered with fear across the city. Untouchable, calculating, and ruthless, he built his empire on intimidation and precision. But when he first saw Clara, a strange unease stirred within him. The girl who did not belong, who moved like a shadow through his city, piqued his curiosity. Over the following days, he learned her patterns, where she worked, where she walked, the tiny apartment she returned to each night. It was meticulous, silent surveillance, but nothing invasive. He appeared in places she frequented, blending into the background, always observing. A coffee shop in the morning, a quiet convenience store in the evening, a flash of dark eyes catching hers before she looked away. She felt it, the subtle presence, a pulse of something both unsettling and thrilling, though she could never have named it. The cultural divide between them was immense, her foreignness against his dominance, yet every encounter chipped away at the invisible wall he had built around himself. Clara, burdened by the weight of her past, moved cautiously, unaware that the wolf who watched her from the shadows had already chosen to unravel her carefully constructed invisibility. It was a dangerous dance, her fear, his fascination, but in the tension of these fleeting moments, the first threads of a bond began to form. Each glance, each coincidence, each careful observation pulled them closer into a world neither had expected to inhabit. Clara had no idea that the eyes following her were more than coincidence, that the man she feared and admired from afar was already rewriting the rules of her life. And Min-jae, despite himself, was beginning to see that this girl, fragile and defiant, might be the one thing he could not command. Clara's hands trembled slightly as she wiped down the counter, the fluorescent lights of the cafe casting harsh shadows across her tired face. Between her 3 jobs, there was barely time to breathe, let alone think about herself. Each shift blurred into the next. Coffee orders, cleaning, deliveries, and late-night bar shifts that left her aching and sleep-deprived. All of it was for her mother, whose medical bills had begun to pile higher than Clara could manage alone. Desperation had become a constant companion, a shadow that clung to her every step. Min-jae appeared without warning, seated across from her in a quiet corner of the lounge where she worked nights. The sudden weight of his presence made her freeze mid-step, the world narrowing to the dark intensity of his eyes. He exuded a calm control that made every instinct in her scream caution. "I have a proposition for you," he said, voice low, deliberate, the hum of the lounge fading around them. Clara's mind raced. Danger, she thought. This man was untouchable, feared across Seoul, a wolf among humans. And yet, desperation pulled her toward him, tethering her to the offer she both wanted and feared. "My mother," Clara began, her voice tight with worry. The words weren't just excuses, they were the raw truth of why she had no choice but to consider this. Min-jae watched her, his expression unreadable. "I chose you because I need to find out," he said, simple and honest. There was no threat, no manipulation, only a quiet acknowledgement of her existence in a way that made her pulse quicken. Clara stared at him, torn. Every logical part of her screamed to refuse, to flee back to the fragile safety of her current life. Yet the threads of hope tugged insistently. Hope that she could secure her mother's care, that she could find some small victory in a life otherwise dictated by struggle. Finally, after a long pause that stretched between heartbeats, she nodded. Accepting Min-jae's offer meant stepping into a world she could barely imagine, one filled with danger, power, and uncertainty. But it also meant survival. It meant giving herself the chance to protect her mother. Her decision settled in her chest like a stone, heavy but resolute. She was no longer just a waitress hustling through endless shifts. She was a participant in a game far larger than herself, one controlled by a man whose reputation made even the bravest tremble. Clara knew her life had changed forever the moment she said yes. Every instinct warned her of the peril ahead, yet beneath it, an unsteady thrill coursed through her veins. She had stepped off the ledge, and there was no turning back. In that choice, Clara discovered a strange clarity. Fear and hope could coexist, and sometimes, the most dangerous decisions were also the ones that offered the greatest chance at survival. The elevator doors opened to reveal the sleek, polished expanse of Min-jae's penthouse, the city lights below stretching like a river of fire and silver. Clara's breath caught as she stepped inside, the sharp scent of fresh herbs and something cooking filling the air. He had promised a private dinner, but she hadn't expected him to be in the kitchen, apron tied neatly, stirring a pot with precise movements. The sight was almost surreal, the untouchable, ruthless Mafia boss showing such domesticity. "You don't have to do this," Clara murmured, leaning against the doorway, arms crossed. "I insist," Min-jae said without looking up, a faint smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Sit." I'll teach you something about Korean cooking tonight." The evening unfolded slowly, the dangerous tension between them softening with each shared gesture and word. He corrected her pronunciation of basic phrases, and she laughed at his attempts to master her favorite dishes. Between bites and lessons, walls they hadn't admitted existed began to crumble, revealing vulnerability neither wanted to show elsewhere. Clara spoke of her mother, of her sacrifices, and Min-jae admitted, in quiet tones, that even a man of his reputation carried burdens heavier than most could imagine. When the meal was done, they lingered near the doorway, the city lights casting shadows across their faces. For a moment, time seemed suspended, the almost kiss, electric and uncertain, hanging between them before reality intruded. Clara's phone buzzed, reminding her of the world outside, the life she was leaving behind, yet stepping closer to the dangerous man felt inevitable. By the end of the night, Clara had accepted the role Min-jae offered, his assistant, a position that promised proximity to the man she couldn't stop thinking about and access to a world she'd never dared enter. She understood the gravity of the choice, yet something inside whispered that survival, and maybe more, awaited her here. Her hands shook slightly as she left the penthouse, the echo of Min-jae's voice in her mind, a promise and a warning all at once. Each step down the hall reminded her that the path she had chosen would change everything, and that some walls were meant to fall for new foundations to be built. Clara just made a choice that will change her life forever, but is it the right one? Would you accept an offer from a dangerous man if it meant saving someone you love? I need to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below telling me if your team, take the risk, or team, run fast. If you're already invested in Clara and Min-jae's story, show me some love by hitting that like button. Your likes tell me you want more stories like this. And listen, if you want to see where this dangerous romance leads, you absolutely need to subscribe right now. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because what happens next will blow your mind. Trust me, you don't want to miss a single moment. Alright, now let's get back to the story, because Clara's first private dinner with Min-jae is about to reveal a side of him no one else has ever seen. Clara's days settled into an unexpected rhythm. Mornings began with the quiet hum of the city beneath the penthouse, sunlight glinting off Min-jae's meticulous apartment, and the aroma of coffee brewing in the kitchen. She quickly learned that life with him was a delicate balance of instruction and observation. He showed her how to navigate his world, the unspoken rules, the subtle signals that could mean danger or loyalty. In turn, she shared her own life, her childhood memories, her mother's stubborn resilience, the tiny domestic skills that had kept her family afloat. Their lessons were never formal. They unfolded in small moments. He corrected her pronunciation of words over breakfast, and she taught him the nuances of her favorite dishes. Laughter became a rare but treasured currency in a world where trust was often transactional. Clara began to see the man behind the reputation, a careful observer, precise, yet quietly searching for something real. One evening, as rain traced silver lines down the panoramic windows, he handed her a bowl of soup he had made himself. Their fingers brushed, lingering just long enough to send a shiver through her spine. Words stumbled between them, unspoken admissions of loneliness and desire. Then, almost without thought, their lips met. The kiss was tender, hesitant, transformative. It carried weight far beyond the room, an acknowledgement of vulnerability, of connection, of something neither wanted to deny. The next day brought a new challenge. Min-jae introduced her to his inner circle, a room of men whose loyalty and suspicion measured the pulse of his empire. Clara felt the tension immediately, the way their eyes appraised her, gauging whether she belonged or was merely a temporary anomaly. She held her head high, meeting each stare with calm composure. But her heart raced, the intimacy of the previous night lingering in her chest. In those encounters, she discovered more about him than she had in weeks of private dinners. She saw the respect he commanded, the fear he inspired, and the subtle way he protected her without making it obvious. Min-jae, in turn, observed her closely, the way she adapted, how she moved through his world without losing herself, the moments when her laughter pierced the careful armor around his heart. By the end of the week, their connection had grown undeniable. Each lesson, each shared meal, each fleeting touch wove them closer together. Clara understood that her life had shifted from survival to something far more precarious and exhilarating. Love, or at least the fragile beginnings of it, tangled with danger and desire. And Min-jae, for the first time in years, recognized a truth he could not ignore. Some walls, no matter how high, were meant to be dismantled, brick by the right person at the right moment. Even as they navigated the uncertainty of their worlds colliding, one certainty remained. They were learning each other, and the lessons came with a depth neither had anticipated. Every glance, every whispered word, and every cautious touch was a step towards something that neither power nor fear could contain. Their hearts had begun to rewrite the rules of the lives they thought they knew, and there was no turning back. Clara had begun to understand the rhythm of Min-jae's world, but nothing could have prepared her for the moment she stepped into the heart of it. The office was sleek and cold, a perfect reflection of the man who ruled it. Men in tailored suits exchanged clipped words. Screens flickered with data and numbers that spoke of power she didn't fully comprehend, and all eyes seemed to flicker toward him when he entered. Min-jae moved through it like a predator in his natural habitat, commanding attention with a glance, a word, a subtle shift in posture. Clara watched silently, her stomach tightening as she realized the stark contrast between the man she had shared laughter and tender kisses with and this formidable figure. She saw him negotiate, ruthless in his logic, indifferent to the pleas or protests around him. Deals were made with an icy precision that left no room for mercy. Watching it unfold, she felt the weight of her feelings pressing against her rational mind. How could she love the man who could wield such control and cruelty, while also cherishing the warmth he had shown her in private? Her inner conflict gnawed at her. Every smile and gentle touch from the other side of their life together seemed almost like a lie compared to the cold decisiveness she now witnessed. Could she reconcile the man she was falling for with the world he dominated? Could she accept the darkness alongside the tenderness? Unbeknownst to her, her life was about to become even more precarious. Across Seoul, Marcus Holt had traced her movements with the meticulous patience of a hunter, piecing together her location. His intent was clear, and danger was drawing closer with each passing hour. Lee Ji-hoon, loyal yet calculating, reported to Min-jae that Clara's presence was becoming a liability. The words lingered in the shadows of her mind, though she did not yet know them. They were the first subtle signals that the safety she felt with Min-jae was fragile, tenuous. Meanwhile, Kang Dae-jung began to strategize, quietly assembling his pieces and planning a move that would intersect with theirs in ways no one could anticipate. Threats were converging, invisible to Clara, but she could feel the tension mounting, an intangible pressure in the air around Min-jae and her. It made the warmth of their private moments feel more urgent, precious, fleeting. As she left the office that evening, a chill ran down her spine. She had glimpsed a side of Min-jae few ever saw, and it frightened her as much as it intrigued her. Love, she realized, was no longer a simple feeling. It was a test, a negotiation between light and shadow, between desire and fear. And the shadows of the past were beginning to encroach on the fragile sanctuary she had found in him. Clara just saw who Min-jae really is in his world, and she's terrified. But here's my question for you. Can love exist between two people from completely different worlds? Can Clara really accept both versions of the man she's falling for? Drop your honest opinions in the comments. I love reading your theories and perspectives. If your heart is racing right now and you're wondering what will happen to them, hit that like button to show your support for this story. And if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? This story is about to get so much more intense. Subscribe now so you don't miss the explosive chapters coming up. Now, let's jump back into the story, because danger is about to knock on Clara's door in a way she never expected. Clara's morning had started like any other, quiet and uneventful, until the sudden rush of movement in the alleyway made her heart slam against her ribs. Shadows twisted toward her, Three men with eyes full of intent and fists clenched. Her instincts screamed, but before she could react, hands grabbed at her, pulling her off balance. The world blurred with panic as fear wrapped its icy fingers around her throat. Then came the roar of authority, the sharp crack of commands in Korean. Suddenly the attackers were yanked back, faces contorted in surprise as bodies hit the ground with brutal precision. Min-jae's security detail had arrived, swift and merciless, leaving Clara trembling on the sidewalk. And then, as she looked up, he was there. Min-jae, standing like a storm unleashed, his eyes dark with a rage she had never seen before. The calm, teasing man who had cooked for her, shared quiet moments, and whispered small comforts, was gone, replaced by a force of nature, a man who could destroy without hesitation. Clara's chest tightened as she watched him move, each motion precise, each command absolute. There was no negotiation, no hesitation, only power. "Are you hurt?" His voice was low, dangerous, a growl that vibrated with anger, but beneath it, a sharp edge of fear for her. She shook her head, unable to speak, still shaken from the close brush with death. "You're coming with me," he stated firmly, his hand firm at the small of her back as he led her toward his car. "You can't stay out here. It's not safe." Clara opened her mouth to argue, to insist she could manage, but the volcano in his eyes stopped her. There was no room for debate. His world was one of control, and he would not let her face danger again. When they reached his compound, the tension between them flared. Min-jae's insistence on her safety clashed with her desire for autonomy. "I can handle myself," she argued, frustration lacing her words. "I don't care," he snapped, the fury barely contained. "I won't let anyone hurt you. Not again." The fight was quiet but potent, a clash of wills, a test of boundaries. Clara's resolve to maintain some semblance of independence wrestled with the undeniable truth that his protection came from love and obsession. Slowly, reluctantly, she agreed to stay within the walls he commanded, the tension between them thick with unspoken words and emotions too strong to name. As the days stretched on, security tightened. Guards patrolled every corner, cameras tracked every movement, and the cage closed ever so slightly around Clara. She could feel the walls pressing in, a constant reminder of Min-jae's uncompromising vigilance, and the dangerous world that now surrounded them both. Even in her unease, she understood the truth. His rage had been terrifying, but it had also been a promise. A vow that he would not let harm come to her while he drew breath, a testament to a devotion as consuming as it was frightening. And with that realization came a strange, heavy comfort. She was no longer alone in the shadows. The first tremors of unease had been subtle, but by the time Marcus Holt's sleek black sedan rolled into Seoul, the storm was unmistakable. He leaned back in the driver's seat, fingertips drumming the leather with calculated patience, a faint smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. In the quiet of the hotel room, he made the call that would set the city alight. Kang Dae-jung's voice crackled through the line, sharp and eager, laced with greed and anticipation. Every piece of intelligence Marcus shared was a spark, feeding the fire that Dae-jung had long been waiting to ignite. Meanwhile, Lee Ji-hoon's betrayal was a secret the audience now understood, though Min-jae remained unaware. Ji-hoon had been feeding information, quietly positioning himself on the side that promised survival and advantage. Clara had no idea, yet another thread of danger was weaving itself around her without her knowledge. Clara's phone vibrated suddenly, cutting through the relative calm of the evening. A message glared back at her from an unknown number, the words jagged and cold. "You're in my city now. Enjoy your last days of safety, Clara." Her fingers trembled as she read it, the chill of recognition crawling down her spine. She knew instantly, Marcus had found her. When she finally met Min-jae in the dimly lit study of his compound, she could no longer hold the truth back. Her voice shook as she confessed the parts of her past she had tried to bury, the pieces she had never dared share with anyone. His hand found hers, strong and unyielding, a tether in the storm. "I should have known," he murmured, the depth of his control and protectiveness mingling in his gaze. But I promise you, he'll never touch you again. I'll make sure of it. The weight of his words settled between them, a promise that offered both comfort and a grim acknowledgement of the dangers ahead. They sat in silence for a long moment, hands entwined, knowing that what was coming would test everything they had built together. Both understood the storm was approaching, the convergence of enemies, of past decisions, of threats long hidden. Clara felt the pull of fear and love intertwining, her pulse racing at the thought of what Marcus, Kang, and the shadows of her past could bring. Min-jae's presence was a shield, yes, but also a reminder of the war they were inevitably drawn into. She tightened her grip on his hand, a silent acknowledgement. They would face it together, even if the price was unthinkable. Everything is about to explode. All of Min-jae's enemies are closing in, and Marcus Holt is in Seoul hunting for Clara. Before we get to the most intense part of this story, I need your prediction. Who do you think is the biggest threat? Comment on your answer. Is it Kang Dae-jung, Lee Ji-hoon, or Marcus Holt? If you're on the edge of your seat right now, please hit that like button. It helps me know you're loving this story. And if you want to see how Min-jae and Clara survive what's coming, because I promise you, it's going to be epic, make sure you're subscribed with notifications on. You do not want to miss the climax of this story. It's going to leave you breathless. All right, let's dive back in, because the attack is about to begin, and nothing will ever be the same. The night air was thick with tension, the neon lights of Seoul casting long shadows over the sprawling compound. Min-jae's men moved with precision, yet the first signs of intrusion came too quickly. Figures scaling the perimeter walls, breaking through security protocols that had seemed invincible just hours before. Clara's heart pounded as alarms shrieked, echoing through the halls. She ducked behind a column, eyes wide, when she saw the first intruder, a man in dark clothing, mask concealing his face, advancing toward the room she had just exited. Instinct took over. She grabbed a heavy metal candlestick from a nearby table and swung it with all her strength. The man stumbled, caught off guard by her ferocity. It was the first time Clara had ever fought back, her adrenaline fueling a courage she didn't know she possessed. The sound of doors crashing open brought Min-jae into the chaos. His entrance was a storm, every step measured, every glance lethal. Marcus Holt's smirk faltered when he saw the man who had haunted half the continent, now fully unleashed. The confrontation was swift, brutal, and unrelenting. Min-jae moved with lethal precision, taking down Holt's men while never losing sight of Clara. In the confusion, the truth about Lee Ji-hoon was revealed. He appeared at the worst possible moment, attempting to strike a deal with Marcus even as he was supposed to be on Min-jae's side. The betrayal cut through the room like a knife, and loyal men quickly intercepted Ji-hoon, neutralizing the traitor before more damage could be done. A gunshot rang out, sharp and terrifying. Min-jae staggered, blood blossoming on his chest. Clara froze for a heartbeat, fear threatening to consume her, but then determination took hold. She could not leave him. She reached for a weapon, hands trembling but firm, stepping into the fray with a resolve that surprised even herself. The room became a controlled chaos, Clara covering Min-jae, while his loyal men fought off the remaining attackers. Each second was a blur of motion, shouts, and the acrid smell of gunpowder. She moved with instinct, protecting the man who had promised to protect her, their roles reversed in the most desperate way. By the time the dust settled, the coup was over. The enemies were either fleeing, incapacitated, or captured, their plan shattered. Min-jae, though injured, was alive, and Clara's hands were marked with the first real evidence of her transformation, from frightened outsider to a woman willing to stand and fight. They collapsed together amid the wreckage of the battle, breathless, bloodied, but unbroken. For a brief moment, silence reigned, broken only by their heavy, shared breathing, the weight of survival pressing them closer than ever before. Min-jae sat alone in the quiet of the compound, the weight of his empire pressing down on him like a storm cloud. For years, power had defined him. Every deal, every move meticulously calculated to maintain control. But the night of the attack had changed everything. The sight of Clara, weapon in hand, fighting to protect him, had shaken him to his core. She had seen him at his most violent, yet she had stood by him, and for the first time, he realized that power meant nothing without her. He made his decision swiftly, with a clarity that came only from the brink of loss. One by one, the structures of his criminal life were dismantled. Accounts were frozen, alliances dissolved, and operations systematically shut down. Every loyal employee was given a choice: leave with security and protection or find a new path. Marcus Holt was deported, his plans thwarted and his reach ended. Lee Ji-hoon and Kang Dae-jung, their betrayals laid bare, were neutralized in ways that left no room for retaliation. The process was meticulous, the air thick with tension, yet beneath it all was a sense of liberation. Min-jae moved like a man shedding chains he hadn't realized he'd carried for decades. And through it all, Clara remained close, her presence both a comfort and a reminder of everything worth leaving behind. She had changed him, softened the edges that the world had hardened, and given him a reason to seek something beyond dominance and fear. They watched together as the last of the threats were dealt with, the compound finally calm, the streets outside no longer trembling at the mention of his name. In that silence, Min-jae felt the first flicker of true peace. Clara leaned against him, her hand resting lightly on his chest, and he felt the pulse of life he'd almost lost. Redemption wasn't in the battles won or the enemies eliminated. It was here, in the quiet, in the choice to let love guide him rather than fear. Min-jae turned to Clara, eyes soft but steady, and for the first time allowed himself to imagine a future unburdened by the weight of his past. The path ahead would not be easy, but it would be theirs. Together, they had survived the impossible, and now they would live it. Not as Mafia king and pawn, but as two people who had fought for the right to love without compromise. Min-jae just gave up his entire empire for Clara. He chose love over power, redemption over revenge. That's real love right there. But before I show you their beautiful ending, tell me, what's the most powerful moment in this story for you? Was it their first meeting? The first kiss? When Clara stood her ground? When Min-jae got shot protecting her? Comment your favorite moment below. If this story has touched your heart, if you felt every emotion alongside Clara and Min-jae, please show me by hitting that like button. And make sure you're subscribed, because I have so many more incredible love stories coming that will take you on emotional journeys just like this one. Now let me show you how their story ends. 6 months later on a beautiful beach in Jeju Island. The sun hung low over Jeju Island, casting a golden glow across the coastal town. The gentle rhythm of waves mingled with the soft chatter of tourists and locals alike. But inside Min-jae's modest restaurant, the world felt entirely their own. Tables were filled with simple, freshly prepared meals, the aroma of seafood and spices drifting through the air. Min-jae moved effortlessly behind the counter, a far cry from the cold, calculated man who had once ruled Seoul's underworld. Now, his power was measured in flavors and smiles, not fear and intimidation. Clara sat at a table near the large windows, her sketchbook open, a collection of her paintings spread out before her. The brushstrokes captured the ebb and flow of the sea, the warmth of sunlight, and the quiet intimacy of their new life. She glanced up as Min-jae approached with a small plate of food, and their eyes met. No words were necessary. The depth of understanding, of shared trials and survival, passed between them. After the last customers had left, Min-jae led Clara down a narrow path to the beach. The sand was cool beneath their feet, the horizon ablaze with the colors of sunset. Waves lapped gently at the shore, and for the first time in months, both felt the full weight of peace. Clara paused, turning toward him, her eyes reflecting the golden light. "You've changed everything," she said softly. "Not just this place, me too." Min-jae's fingers brushed hers. "We changed each other," he murmured. "I thought I knew what power was, but it wasn't in the fear I commanded. It was in letting go and letting someone in." Clara smiled, her heart swelling with a quiet happiness. "I never thought I could be safe or loved." And yet, her voice faltered, but Min-jae tightened his hand around hers, grounding her. They walked together along the shoreline, the water swirling around their ankles, until the sun dipped low enough to set the sky on fire. Min-jae stopped and pulled Clara close, his forehead resting against hers. The moment stretched, charged with everything they had endured, the betrayals, the fights, the near-death moments that had carved scars into their souls. And then, finally, their lips met in a gentle, deliberate kiss. It was a promise, a declaration, a surrender to the life they had fought so fiercely to claim. As they pulled apart, still holding on to one another, the wind carried the distant laughter of children playing on the beach, the soft calls of seabirds, and the rhythm of waves. Clara whispered, "We chose each other." Min-jae nodded, eyes glimmering. "And that choice is everything." And that is how a Korean mafia boss learned that true power isn't about control. It's about having the courage to surrender for love. And how a broken woman learned that she was never weak. She just needed someone to believe in her the way she finally believed in herself. If this story moved you, if it made you feel something real, if you're sitting there with tears in your eyes or a smile on your face, I need you to hit that like button right now. Your love tells me that stories like this matter, that love stories with depth and transformation are what you want to see more of. Now, drop a comment and tell me, what was your absolute favorite moment in Clara and Min-jae's journey? Was it the first time their eyes met? When Min-jae cooked dinner for her? When Clara picked up that weapon to protect him? When he gave up everything? I want to hear from every single one of you because your comments fuel these stories. And listen, if you love this epic romance, you absolutely must subscribe to this channel right now. Click that subscribe button and hit the notification bell, because I have a whole library of incredible love stories coming your way. Stories about forbidden romance, impossible choices, mafia bosses, billionaires, enemies to lovers, second chances, every emotional journey you could dream of. Share this video with someone who loves a good romance, someone who believes in the transformative power of love, or someone who just needs to feel something beautiful today. Thank you so much for going on this journey with me. Thank you for investing your time and emotions into Clara and Min-jae's story. Remember, the most dangerous thing a powerful man can do is fall in love. And the bravest thing a broken woman can do is allow herself to be loved. I'll see you in the next story. Until then, keep believing in love, even when it seems impossible.